Hello and welcome to the Rank and Report Football Show, the debut episode of the Rank and Report Football Show. From Richmond, Virginia to London, England, I am Adam Booker, and I'm joined, as I always will be, by Mr. Charlie Gordon. How you doing, Charlie?
I'm not too bad. Yeah, I'm not too bad. How are you doing?
I'm good. Just looking forward to football coming back, well, domestic football coming back, and enjoying the last few days of the international break where I just don't have any care in the world about what's going on in the football world.
Yeah, no, same. I mean, I've been dipping into a few internationals here and there, mainly just the England games, which I basically try and pretend to be engrossed in the England games. But let's be honest, the internationals are just so slow paced. It's kind of difficult to get into it unless it's the World Cup or the Euros or something like that. But so I'm with you. I'm excited for club football to come back.
Yeah, well, we haven't even gotten any friendlies yet for the U.S. men's national team, and obviously, right now, the the mood around the U.S. national team is very high, just because of all the stars we have emerging around Europe. But we haven't gotten it to see any of them play together yet, so it's just kind of a waiting game right now. But yeah, I think it'll be good to have this crazy domestic season back this weekend.
Yeah, yeah. No, well, I'm with you.
All right, so before we even jump into anything and jump into any rankings and all that stuff, why don't we just give a little overview about what this show is and what we're going to do and what we're all about, and maybe even a little intro from both of us, just telling the audience who we are. So I think it's pretty obvious what we do on the show. We're going to rank and report different football clubs. But basically, we're going to give our 1 to 10 rankings of the biggest clubs in Europe, and it's going to be kind of like I like to say NFL style, in the sense that it's power rankings, and it's going to be based off of form and recent results, as well as the talent that the team has. So even if you think, Liverpool is the best team in the world, if they lose a couple of games in a row, then they might fall out of first or second place wherever you may have them in your brain. So it's going to be a bit more fluid than just who has the best players, which just makes
Yeah,
it a bit more exciting.
it's kind of like the interplay between form and then the legacy of what they've achieved in the past 12 months. Really, you especially at this stage at the beginning of the season, we've got to put a little bit more consideration in terms of what they achieved at the end of last season, which because of COVID wasn't really all that long ago.
Yeah, I mean, it was only what, like a 2 week break from the Champions League final to the kickoff of most of the domestic seasons. So essentially, no preseason, no offseason to see teams really change all that much. But yeah, so we're going to give our 1 to 10 rankings, and then we'll have plenty of time to discuss and debate. And obviously, we're going to have some differences in our rankings every episode, so we'll be able to discuss what differences we have and why we have those differences. So, Charlie, I'll let you kind of start us off. Tell us about yourself. Tell us who you are. Tell us some fun facts, whatever you want to tell us.
Of course, of course. So I'm Charlie. I'm a fresh faced looking 23-year-old. I'm from a small town called Kidderminster, which is in the West Midlands area of England. Even the English people watching this might not have heard of that, but Kidderminster is where I'm from. And I'm currently living in Hounslow, which is a borough of London. And yeah, at the moment, I'm studying to be a sports journalist. So I've moved here to London to do a 1 year course to learn how to be a sports journalist with the aim of either talking or writing about football in the future. What about you?
Well, if I remember correctly, you had a degree in politics, so you had quite a U-turn to get to football journalism, didn't you?
Yeah, you're not wrong. Well, I've got here um, via a long degree with politics, which I did enjoy, to be fair, but also a brief flirt with accounting, which if you've ever done accounting before, you'll nothing will make you change your life's direction like a year in accounting. So yeah, that's what's made me want to do something that I enjoy.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. So I'm Adam. I live in Richmond, Virginia, here in the United States of America. And like Charlie, I am studying to become a football journalist. In fact, like Charlie, I do a bit of football journalism on the side. I write for City Extra covering Manchester City, who both Charlie and I support coincidentally. Um, and yeah, I'm just happy to be doing this show and be given some weekly or bi-weekly rankings and kind of get our opinions out there.
Mm, it's going to be fun.
All right, so I think with that we can just jump straight into our rankings. Charlie, how do you feel about your rankings? Are you confident? If you're like me, who is a man of very low confidence, I definitely tinkered with mine just daily, hourly, maybe every couple of minutes. I tinkered with my rankings. So, how do you feel about yours?
Yeah. Do you know what? I'm feeling pretty good about it now, to be honest. There was a little bit of to and fro in. There was some rogue teams that I did want to put in there to begin with. That I thought, do I want this to be people's first impression of me putting these crazy teams in? But I'd say I'm pretty happy with the 10 that I've got there now. I know there's a few honourable mentions that I would love to talk about at length as well, but hopefully I'm pretty sure they'll be in the top 10 in one or two of the coming weeks, so we can discuss them as well. But yeah, what about you? I've heard you were pretty obsessive about your top 10.
Yeah, like I said, I wasn't too. I'm confident in my knowledge and my opinions, but when it comes down to ranking teams against each other from different leagues, it's a very difficult thing to do. Obviously, because the strength of leagues can fluctuate, and one year Germany may have three or four high quality teams, and England may only have a few, and then it may swap. So, um, yeah, I feel good now, but in the maybe week leading up to this, I was definitely doing a lot of tinkering to get to this point. So, yeah, I'm looking
Yeah,
forward to just
that's the joy of the show. That's the joy of the show, really, is because football is so subjective. That's why people are paid to give their opinions on it. So yeah, hopefully we can have a few arguments. If not today, maybe next time or the time after that.
exactly. All right, so let's get into our rankings. I'm going to go first. I'm going to give my 10 through 6, and then I'll let Charlie give his 10 through 6 before we get to the real juicy stuff going 5 to 1. So, in at number 10, I have got Tottenham Hotspur. Last couple of results for Tottenham was a 6-1 win at Old Trafford and a 1-1 draw at home against Newcastle, a game that they largely dominated and probably should have won if not for a late Newcastle penalty that should not have been given. Um, I think Mourinho has his team playing very well. I like all their summer signings. I think Harry Kane is playing at his best form we've seen in a few years, and obviously Gareth Bale is yet to come into this team, so that's going to just be another boost. However big of a boost it is, it's going to be a boost. So I've got Tottenham at number 10. At number 9, I've got Juventus. They're serial Serie A winners, but they've got a big question mark at manager with Andrea Pirlo, who has literally never managed any senior football in his life up until this point. Their last two results were a 2-2 draw at Roma, which is not an easy place to go, and they were down a man for about 30 minutes of that game. And a 3-0 win against Sampdoria. But look, any team with Cristiano Ronaldo is going to be competing and probably winning most of their games because he can drag any team through any game. But I think for now I've just got him in 9th because there's a lot of question marks around the manager. In at number 8, I've got RB Leipzig, who are sitting first place right now in the Bundesliga. And obviously a team that made it to a Champions League semifinal last season and weren't far off from getting to a Champions League final. So their last couple of results were a 4-0 win against Schalke, who may just be the worst team in Europe. So, could be a bit of a write-off. Anybody can beat Schalke at the moment, but 1-1 draw against Leverkusen
It's a bold statement.
was the week before that.
Trying to attract some haters on week 1.
Look, Schalke fans can get in my mentions if they want to, but there's just very little argument to be had about anything positive around the club right now.
Hey, look,
Um,
I've actually since I've moved to London, I've only been on this course about 3 weeks, but I've become pretty good friends with a Schalke fan from Gelsenkirchen in Germany. So I can, if you want Schalke fans to get up in your mentions, I can make it happen. You just sit tight.
I'd love it. I mean, there's just I don't know what there is for them to say, but anyways, moving on. We can get to Schalke another day, perhaps. Um, yeah, I've got RB Leipzig in first, and you know, like I said, it's a team that made it to a Champions League semifinal last year. They lost a lot of goals when they sold Timo Werner and Patrick Schick, but it seems like they haven't really skipped a beat so far in this Bundesliga season. They signed Justin Kluivert on loan from Roma, who I think is going to help a lot with creativity. So I'm looking forward to RB Leipzig. I think they could be on a real upward trajectory. So in number 7, I've got Everton, who are sitting top in the Premier League right now. The unsurprising surprise team of the season so far. Carlo Ancelotti has got that midfield that he wants in James Rodriguez, Alan, and Abdoulaye Doucouré. And, Dominic Calvert-Lewandowski up top, scoring as many goals as he wants, just scoring unlimited goals. And if they keep this up, then who says they can't win the league? Finish second, somewhere in there. But yeah, their last couple of results were a 4-2 win against Brighton and a 2-1 win against Crystal Palace. And in this freak of a season, Everton could potentially, like I said, win a title. So you got to have them in the top 10 for me at the moment. And then in at number 6, I've got their Merseyside rivals, Liverpool. Look, Liverpool are sitting in 5th at the moment. Obviously, they had a bit of a freak result, losing 7-2 at Villa Park over the weekend. The week before that, they thoroughly dominated Arsenal 3-1. But that cloak of invincibility is kind of gone with Liverpool. It felt like the kind of team that was beating everybody in the tunnel for about 18 months. But that seems to be kind of gone, and teams can get at them now. I think they're still the best squad in England, and on their day, the best team in England. But a couple of injuries could derail them, and we'll see. But like I said, that cloak of invincibility is gone, and when these title-winning teams, when teams find a way to get at title-winning teams, there can sometimes be some major collapses. So I've got Liverpool in at number 6.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting, the fact that you've put Everton below Liverpool there. Obviously, we've got the Merseyside derby coming up on the 17th of the month. That's only 4 days away. And yeah, the outcome of that game is really going to tell us a lot as to where Everton truly are, in terms of whether they can hang with the big boys or not.
I think that's why I don't have them ahead of Liverpool yet, just because obviously they've won, I think it's 7 straight now, but they haven't really had that ultimate test to see really where they are. Obviously, they won at the new White Hart Lane, but that was opening day of a freak season. So yeah, I'm kind of waiting for this Merseyside derby to really give me a barometer of where they are.
Yeah, no, that's going to tell us a lot. But I'll get into my 10 to 6 now. You've had your turn to speak. I'll rattle a few off. So at number 10, I've gone for Inter Milan, who are, I didn't have them in my top 10 to begin with, to be completely honest. But yeah, I've decided to put them in there because they're just such an exciting team. I'm very much looking forward to watching them play this season. That strike partnership of Lautaro Martinez and Lukaku up front is exciting enough on its own. And I think the fact that they ran Juventus so close last season with Victor Moses and Ashley Young as wing-backs is absolutely mental. And now they've got Ashraf Hakimi, one of the most exciting wing-backs in Europe, and then Perisic on the other side as well. I think basically Antonio Conte with that formation is an absolute force to be reckoned with. So I've got them in at number 10 at the moment. Just quickly, their last 2 results, there was a 5-2 thrashing of Benevento. Who are they? I don't know. It doesn't matter. They thrashed them. And then a 1-1 draw away at Lazio. Very scrappy game, but, going to Lazio's no easy venture anyway. So that's them at number 10. Number 9, I've gone for Sevilla. I just think, they're the evergreen underdogs, Sevilla. They won the Europa League last season against all the odds. You would have thought Inter Milan and United were a better side than them at the time. But they've made a good start again to the season. They've got 3 games played, 2 wins and 1 draw, and their draw was away at the Nou Camp. And, that's nothing to be scoffed at. We all know how tough of a place that is to go and get a result, even though it's kind of not the same as it used to be. So yeah, they've not got that kind of star power, Sevilla, but they're still punching well above their weight. And they've made a good start, so they're in at number 9. Number 8, we've got Juventus. You've already spoken about Juventus, so I'll gloss over it really. 3-0 win at home to Sampdoria, and then that scrappy 2-2 away draw at Roma. It's difficult to tell with Juventus because they've only played 2 games. Their weekend game at Napoli got suspended because of coronavirus-related news. But yeah, I think it's difficult to tell because I'm looking at their starting lineup there. Their midfield of Ramsey, Weston McKennie, Rabiot, and Kulusevski. Am I saying that right? Yeah, I think it's Kulusevski. It's a pretty subpar midfield, to be honest. And when you've got the likes of Arthur and
don't be coming for the United States' very own Weston McKennie, the best midfielder in the world.
Listen, Weston McKennie must be pinching himself every morning that he's getting to play for Juventus. But I'm not going to take it away from him. Either way, they've got some star players to come back, and like you said, any team with CR7 in it has got a chance of being very, very successful indeed. So Juventus there at number 8. Number 7, we got Liverpool. We all know about Liverpool's quality. They've got that iconic front 3 of Firmino, Salah, and Mane. And to be honest, you could rattle off their whole team. That it's just such a complete team that there's no real weak point. But the reason they've dropped down all the way to number 7 is purely because of the nature of that 7-2 defeat. I honestly can't remember a stranger defeat since I've started watching football. Obviously, I remember the Germany 7-1 against Brazil at their own World Cup. That had a similar kind of shock factor, more so because that was on the biggest stage of all. But this is just an absolutely bizarre result. And since the start of the season, it just kind of looks like they're being sussed out a little bit, Liverpool. It could be that their reign as the dominant force in English football could be coming to a close. So I've got them at number 7. And moving on to number 6, I have gone for PSG. They started off the season with 2 losses, but they've followed that up with 4 wins in a row. So they're now pretty well placed in Ligue 1. Their last 2 games were a 2-0 win away at Rennes, followed by a 6-1 thumping of Angers at home. It's just a very, very exciting team, PSG. You've got Mbappe, you've got Icardi, Neymar, Julian Draxler, Keylor Navas, and then you've got the exciting centre-backs of Marquinhos and Kimpembe as well. And I think, to sum it all up, really, this is PSG's golden generation, and they need to win something right now. And it's got to be this season, otherwise it's going to pass them by. So I've got PSG in at number 6. What do we think of that?
All right. Well, I just wanted to mention Weston McKennie for a minute because I'm really upset about it, to be honest. to throw him in as a subpar midfielder. I just wanted to reference something that, is obviously probably not seen around the world, but one of the biggest newspapers in Italy, the Gazzetta dello Sport, they happened to mention after McKennie's debut performance for Juventus that he is a Juventus legend in the making.
Interesting.
And that is my midfielder. I like to think that I birthed him into the football world.
Yeah, you're definitely responsible for his football ability. But look, it wasn't actually shots directly fired at Weston McKennie. It was more so at the other 3. So you can wind your neck in, basically.
Okay. All right, moving on to my 5 through 1 rankings, getting into the juicy stuff now. In at number 5, I have got Barcelona. Obviously, there was a lot of toxicity around this club in the summer, with new manager coming in the door and Leo Messi basically telling the club he wants to leave and only staying because he's being held hostage in a way. Um, but so far they're off to a fairly decent start. They got a 3-0 win at Real Sociedad a few weeks ago, which they hadn't won there in I think 8 years. And then they get a 1-1 draw at home with Sevilla, who you said is a tough nut to crack. So I think it's a pretty good start. They've obviously got Ansu Fati kind of firing at the moment, and if he can be that guy to replace the Suarez and Neymar goals that they've been lacking in the last few seasons, then why not Barcelona having a pretty good season? So obviously Messi is still around, and Messi is going to be magical until the day he dies. So I've got Barcelona in at number 5 because I think that, like Juventus, even though there's a lot of question marks around them, there's just enough talent to drag them over the line to at least a first or second place finish and a deep Champions League run. So in at number 4, I've got Inter Milan, a little bit higher than you've got them. Um, you kind of laid out all the positives there. Obviously, Ashraf Hakimi on that right side, I think it's the best signing of the summer and a very underrated signing. Everyone likes to talk about Thiago going to Liverpool and all that kind of stuff, but the guy is so dynamic and so explosive on that right side. And when he can play balls into the box to Lukaku and Lautaro Martinez, it's really an unstoppable attacking force. So I think the problem with Inter is a bit of inconsistency, but I have a feeling they may hit some consistent form, and when they do, they're pretty unplayable, especially in Serie A, with Juve being a bit of a question mark. So I've got Inter at number 4. In at number 3, I've got the European champions Bayern Munich. Look, I think Bayern is the best team in the world. I think they have the best squad in the world. They've only lost one of their last 20 matches, and that was a 4-1 loss to Hoffenheim a couple of weeks ago. Last weekend, they had a 4-3 win against Hertha Berlin. They needed 4 Lewandowski goals to get through that game. The only reason I don't have them in first or second is just because obviously they lost that game at Hoffenheim, and there's been some really close calls lately, and teams have been able to kind of get at them and figure them out a little bit, but their talent has been dragging them over the line in these games. So I think there's every chance in the world they could lose a few more games, but still I have them up in number 3 because they're that good and they're such a machine. So in at number 2, I've got Real Madrid, who are sitting first in La Liga. Last 2 results were a 1-0 win against Levante and a 2-1 win against Valladolid. Nothing that this team does is pretty, but as we've seen from Zidane's Real Madrid, especially when he won those 3 Champions Leagues in a row, is that they always find a way. No matter what game it is, no matter what opponent it is, they find a way, whether it's a Sergio Ramos 94th minute headed goal to win the game, whatever it is, they always find a way. And for me, they've got to be in that top 1 or 2 because they're always going to find a way. It's as simple as that. So I've got them up in second. And in at number 1, I've got the mighty Atalanta, who have just taken European football by storm the last few years. Their last 2 results were a 5-2 win versus Cagliari and a 4-1 win against Lazio, who, like you said, is not an easy team to beat. And they did that in Rome. So we're going to have a bit of a discussion on Atalanta later, so I don't want to give away too much, but this team is an unbelievable story, and story aside, they're an unbelievable team. So I've got Atalanta in first place.
Yeah. Okay. Now I'm gonna rattle my 5 through to 1, and then we can see what we can argue about. So number 5, slightly higher than you, I've put Everton as number 5. And to be honest, they've caught me completely off guard this season. Because, when you think of your big 6 in the UK, normally it's fairly rigid, with the exception of your Leicester that might come along once in 100 years. But I don't know why I overlooked them. Like, when you put all the pieces together, you've got Carlo Ancelotti, absolute legend of a manager. The likes of James Rodriguez, Andre Gomez, Alan Doucouré, Lucas Digne, like these players have all got serious heritage at the top of European football. And then when you combine all that together with Dominic Calvert Lewandowski, as you've called him in the past, I mean, where has he come from? Oh my word. He's got 9 goals already in all competitions this season, which I think is more than anyone in Europe. He honestly, every time he gets on the pitch at the moment, he's looking like he's scoring a goal. And, I've had the pleasure of watching Everton every week since the start of the season, and James has been an absolute delight to watch as well. So to sum it up, really, they're the real deal, Everton, and I expect them to do something serious this season. If not win the league, definitely be up there with the big teams. So they're in at number 5. Number 4, I've got Real Madrid. Slightly controversial because you just said they've got to be in the top 2. I've got them down here, and that is because, it's like similar to what you were saying about that. They're more pragmatic. They just find a way to win, and that doesn't get the juices flowing for me. Their last 2 games, 1-0 win against Valladolid, and then a 2-0 win at Levante. They're pretty, you can't tell too much from those games, because they're easy teams at the end of the day. And I just think it's fair to say they're a team that's on the way down. And they're clinging on, really. They've still got some stars in there like Sergio Ramos, Karim Benzema, and Luka Modric, but these guys are coming towards the end of their career, and they're going to be relying on youth more and more very soon. So, but having said that, they're still a force. They're still favourites to win La Liga, so I've got them in at number 4. Number 3, we've got Bayern Munich, who, under normal circumstances, they should be number 1. They should be top in this list. But you can't ignore the fact they've conceded 7 in their last 2 games. That's quite worrying. On paper, that's very, very worrying. There was a 4-1 defeat away at Hoffenheim, and then a 4-0 win at Hertha, where, like you said, Lewandowski had to score all 4 goals. That's the most typical Lewandowski thing I've ever heard in my life. But, so 7 goals in 2 games. But what I will say is the 3 goals conceded against Hertha, they were not really at fault defensively. They were just very, very well taken goals. So, Bayern, their squad depth is absolutely scary, especially now they've got Leroy Sané in there on the wing. They're all over the pitch. They are just an absolutely complete team, along with Liverpool. And I expect them to do some serious damage in Europe this season as well. But they've dropped down because of that 4-1 defeat to Hoffenheim to number 3. Number 2, again, I'm loving causing some controversy this week because you had these a lot lower down. I've got RB Leipzig at number 2 because, let me just hit you with the facts. They are top of the Bundesliga. They made it to the semi-finals of last season's Champions League. These lot are a serious, legitimate top club in Europe now. And, to be challenging the likes of Dortmund and Bayern in the Bundesliga is no mean feat at all. Like you said, Werner's gone. We're all thinking, how are they going to cope? I mean, to be honest, I watched the highlights of their 4-0 win over Schalke a few days ago, and they are a stunning team to watch. They're so, so good to watch. Lots of one-touch passing and attack. And they actually, again, this might be controversial, they remind me a little bit of Bielsa's Leeds. The way they attack, they just throw bodies forwards. They are, relentless. They're fearless. And, they're going to be an exciting team to watch this season with a lot of new emerging talent, which I can't wait to see. And then we go on to number 1. We're in agreement. We love to see it. We've got Atalanta, who are blowing teams away. They continue to be blowing teams away. They were unlucky to get knocked out of the Champions League last season at the hands of PSG. They're probably going to have nightmares about that for the next 10 years. But yeah, last 2 games, a 4-1 demolition of Lazio away and a 5-2 demolition of Cagliari at home. You just can't look past them for number 1. They're an unbelievably exciting attacking side led by Gian Piero Gasperini. And, let's talk about them. What have we got?
Well, yeah, I mean, if we want to hop straight into Atalanta here, I think the biggest thing we have to start with is the fact that they have the budget of like a mid-table championship side, which is when you put that on
Yeah.
top of everything, to be where they are, even if they were a big club with a big budget, to be where they are now is still impressive. But then when you put on top of that the fact that they have the budget of a like Middlesbrough, then we're talking like unreal, like punching above your weight to get to where they are. I mean, like you said, their last two games they scored 9 goals, and they're on pace to
Mm.
score like 150 right now, based on their first three Serie A games. I mean, they've scored, they've now scored um, 4 or more goals in their first 3 games. That's the first team to do that since 1987 Real Madrid in the top 5 leagues. So it's just unreal
Great
stuff.
stat.
It's
I love that
unreal
stat.
stuff.
Yeah, no, it is. And I think, we talk about them as an attacking side. They play 3-4-1-2. It's a pretty ballsy formation, should we say. And, when you play that formation, your attack better be pretty special because you're essentially giving up some solidity at the back to just try and flat out outscore your opposition. And yeah, it's a front three that's kind of come from nowhere. You got Alejandro Gomez, who has been in Italian football for a long time, and he's really what you call a late bloomer. He's got 4 goals, 2 assists already this season, and all the attacks are going through him. And then you've got a really effective strike partnership of Duvan Zapata, who's great at holding up the ball, very strong. And then you've got Luis Muriel, who plays on the last man, and he's fast. And both of them two, they're exquisite finishers as well. So is Gomez. And when you add together, that cocktail of attacking abilities between the three of them, as we've seen so far, the results have just been devastating. 13 goals in 3 games is crazy, crazy stuff.
Yeah, and something that's really impressive about this team is the fact that, we see this all the time where kind of a low budget, mid to lower table kind of team makes a run at, a title or makes a run at a Champions League, and then their squad gets absolutely picked apart in the summer. You look at Monaco of, what was it, 4 or 5 years ago, that the team that had Bernardo Silva, Kylian Mbappe, Benjamin Mendy, and that team was just sold off left and right after that season. That was a bit of a surprise. But when you look at this Atalanta team, they basically kept everybody together after a season last year where they finished in third and they were only, I think, 5 points off of a Scudetto, and 90 seconds away from beating PSG in that Champions League quarterfinal and putting themselves in a semifinal. So they've kept basically everybody but Timothy Castagna, who went to Leicester. And one thing that's so impressive is when anybody leaves this team, they're replaced so quickly and so easily. And what that tells me is that the system that Gasparini has put into place is just so well oiled that it doesn't matter who's in there, because whoever it is going to do a job for him.
Yeah, I absolutely could not agree more. You've got to give maximum credit to Gasparini for creating this team and this system in such an unorthodox shape as well. And it's because, you talk about teams getting picked apart after success, like I'll say Ajax as an example. Frankie de Jong, Van der Beek's gone now, De Ligt went as well. That's because those players individually were absolutely world class. So this Atalanta team, they haven't really got any world class individuals. So that's what makes it even crazier. It's just a classic example of the team being, more effective than the sum of the individual parts. And like we said, you've got to give Gasparini ultimate credit, who's been in charge since 2016, for creating such a iconic underdog of a team.
Yeah. Now, you say that they don't have any, well, not no individual world-class talent. There is one player that you've already mentioned that I just want to throw out there, and that's Alejandro Gomez, who they call Papu Gomez. He is an absolute baller. I genuinely think he could walk into most top 5 league or top teams in Europe. I truly think he could walk into most teams and at least, vie for a spot in the starting 11. He's that good. Like you said, he is very much a late bloomer, and until this Atalanta team started making runs in the Champions League and in Serie A, no one really knew who he was. But I urge people watching or listening to this that don't really know who Papu Gomez is, just go watch some Atalanta highlights or go watch specifically some Papu Gomez highlights. The guy is genuinely world class. But
Yeah,
but yeah, I
he's
mean, go ahead.
he's an interesting player. I'm looking at his page now, and he's got no heritage whatsoever in other top level teams. He played for San Lorenzo in Argentina. Metalist Kharkiv was his last team before he joined Atalanta in 2014. So he's just come from nowhere. Even before these last couple of seasons, he wasn't really setting the world alight. So that's why I think you've got to give credit to Gasparini, who's just found such an effective role for him. But yeah, like you say, he's well worth watching because he's on fire at the moment. He's absolutely on fire.
Yeah, and now to just kind of wrap things up here with Atalanta, I think the biggest thing is the steady progression that we've seen, and they finish in a top four spot. They make a deep run in the Champions League, and they finish in third, and they just keep getting better and better, and starting each season better and better. And who says they can't go out and win a title this year? I mean, you and I both spoke about Inter Milan when we were giving our rankings, and I think most people are looking at Inter to be that team, to what they say in Italy is anti-Juve, which is the team that's finally going to break that streak of Juve just winning. What I think they're on 9 straight titles now. But why
Yeah.
not? Why not Atalanta? I think they're overlooked because of the size of the club and the budget and all that. But at this point in time, they're far better than Inter Milan, and they're probably far better than Juve. So I don't see any reason for them to not go out and win the Scudetto this year, and maybe even just blow the rest of the competition away. All right, so let's talk about Tottenham. I had them in at 10th, and I mentioned I think they're on a bit of an upward trajectory. You don't have them in your rankings at all. So let's get down to the bottom of this. What's the reason that you're not nearly as high on Tottenham as I might be?
I think, Mourinho's a divisive figure, but I just think Tottenham are on their way down. I think a few years ago, Pochettino took that group of players as far as they could be taken. Harry Kane, Dele Alli, Christian Eriksen, as it was then, as their standout players. I just think he eked every last drop out of them. And, Mourinho, you can't discredit Mourinho and what he's done in his career, but I don't see him making this Tottenham team into one of the 10 best teams in Europe. I just don't see it. And I think they're tired. Yeah, I'll let you defend yourself, but in a word, I think Tottenham are a tired club.
Well, I will preface this by saying that this is where they are in my rankings right now on current form. And I think if you look back at their last few games, they've now scored 11 goals in their last 2 games. Well, 13 actually, because there was the Newcastle game in between Southampton and United. But I think that I get what you're saying with Poch kind of taking this team to its ceiling and then having nowhere else to go. But at the same time, I think Mourinho kind of took them to a different building with a different ceiling in a way. He's not necessarily pushing them through that ceiling, but it's a completely different style of football that, you use Harry Kane as an example. In Poch's system, he was leading the line, pressing, and was very much the focal point of the attack. If you watch Tottenham's last couple of games, Harry Kane has been assisting Son left and right, and he's been dropping back kind of in that gap between the opponent's defense and midfield, and he's almost like a point guard in a sense, or a quarterback, where he's kind of
Yeah.
facilitating the ball around the field. And that's something we kind of knew Harry Kane could do, but we haven't really seen it all that much because he's been obviously such a prolific goal scorer. But I think you just see Jose Mourinho getting different things out of players than Poch did, not necessarily saying that Poch wasn't getting the best out of anybody, or that Mourinho is essentially getting the best out of somebody, but he's bringing different attributes out of players. And you look at the signings that they've made, I think Reguilon is a brilliant signing at left back. I don't think Ben Davies was really up to it as far as competing where Tottenham wants to be competing, which is in that top four and making deep runs into the Champions League and finally getting their hands on some silverware. I think Reguilon was a brilliant signing. And I know, Pierre-Emile Højbjerg isn't necessarily a sexy signing, but he's a Mourinho signing, a guy that kind of like Nemanja Matic, who Mourinho had at Chelsea and then very specifically brought to United. He did a role that Jose very, he needs in that Jose team. And Jose teams are so unique in the way that they defend and they press. So I don't know. I think Jose's just got different things out of different players that Poch didn't. Not saying that one is better than the other, but we're seeing new attributes from different players. And I think there's still progress to be made here, especially with Gareth Bale coming in. That's a whole other factor that we haven't even discussed yet, is that Gareth Bale is back.
Yeah. Now, but before I get on to Bale, just to respond to what you've just said, I think Mourinho's kind of proven himself in recent times anyway to be a bit of an impulsive coach. So, him moving Kane back to like a quarterback type position, as you described it, was more of a reactionary movement, I think, because he was becoming less effective. He's a slow striker and he just wasn't. We've seen him play much better before. And Mourinho came to the very, I'll give him his credit. He came to a very smart decision to tell Kane to drop off and to tell the likes of Son or Lucas Moura or Lamella, whoever's playing on the wings, to kind of try and get beyond their last man, because we know that Kane has got the ability to drop off and play that role. We're used to seeing it in England because Wayne Rooney did a very similar thing towards the end of his career, even though Kane's not in his later years just yet. But yeah, he's a reactionary coach. Like we saw with Dele Alli. Obviously, he's sort of gone off a cliff again now. But last season, he came in, said some harsh words to Dele Alli, and he was in the best form we've seen him for about 3 or 4 years after that. So his reactionary methods are in a good spell at the moment, but I think he's struggling to nail down a solid identity with Spurs. I think that's what I would say.
Yeah, no, I totally agree that he's very reactionary, especially these days where he seems to kind of, unfortunately, bring a lot of toxicity to clubs. We see the last couple clubs he's been at where he's left the club in kind of tatters in a way. He's just been like so toxic and calling players out by name in the media and all that kind of stuff. But for me, Jose is a very short-term manager, and he can win now in a way. Like I said, we haven't seen it lately. That we're still kind of talking about the old Jose, but I'm starting to see from this Tottenham team some of the trademark patterns that we saw at Jose's Inter or Jose's good Chelsea sides. So I think I'm really just kind of going on a hope here that this continues. And if this continues and you add in Gareth Bale, then, you look at a front three of Son, Kane, and Bale, and you're talking top 5 front three in Europe potentially. I mean, that's an unreal front three as far as talent goes.
Yeah, potentially. Gareth Bale's a really interesting talking point because no one really knows what's going to happen when he gets in the team. We've got 2 Gareth Bales. We've got the Gareth Bale who absolutely dominated the Premier League before he left for Real Madrid and commanded a world record transfer fee at the time of £86 million. And he kind of hit the ground running when he got to Madrid as well. Or we've got the Gareth Bale who doesn't love football anymore, who is more interested seemingly in picking up his wage packet and swanning off to play golf on the weekends rather than, putting in the work and grinding out wins with the team. So it's pretty difficult to know which Gareth Bale you're going to get. I've heard some interesting views from both sides. Like some people have said convincingly that maybe Gareth Bale just needs an arm around him. Maybe he just needs to feel like he's the man at the club, because it's a well-known fact. Zinedine Zidane wasn't that kind of figure for him. He wasn't putting his arm around him and saying, "You're the main man. This team needs you." That wasn't what was happening at all. But one thing that we will say about Jose related to Gareth Bale is Jose's a great man manager, especially to his key players. John Terry, Frank Lampard have talked about it in the past. So I'm sure Jose will, be well equipped to push the right buttons for Bale, to perhaps get him into that kind of form again. And I don't really like Spurs, but as a neutral, I would love to see, Gareth Bale near to his top form back in the Premier League. I think that would be great for everyone to see.
Yeah, well, I think I'm a bit torn on Gareth Bale, and one part of me says that he acted the way he acted in Madrid because of the environment that he was in. This is a player that scored one of the greatest El Clasico goals we've ever seen in that Copa del Rey game, where he knocked the ball around the defender and kind of veered out of bounds and came back in and scored. This is a guy that scored an overhead kick in a Champions League final, one of the greatest, if not the greatest, Champions League final goal we've ever seen. And he's largely been a key part of a team that won 3 Champions Leagues in a row. And you know how these Madrid fans are, and clubs like Barcelona, they're whistling players that have given them everything and given them Champions Leagues and blah, blah, blah. And, Gareth Bale has spoken about it before publicly, about he didn't understand why he's getting whistled because of a few bad performances with everything he's given to the club. So part of me thinks that he will come into an environment where he is loved, and he will forever be loved by the Tottenham faithful because of what he was at the club, even before this new era of Bale at Tottenham. The first Bale era at Tottenham, he did so much for that club that he will forever be loved. Even if what he didn't result in silverware, he's just still such a hero at that club because of what he was and what he provided in those years that he was there. And so a big part of me thinks, like you said, he comes back into an environment where he is the man and everybody loves him, no matter what his past or present is. And I think that's a good environment for him to love football again. And a Gareth Bale that loves playing football. Now his fitness is a whole other question, but a Gareth Bale that loves playing football is obviously a world-class talent. So it's just going to be about whether or not that environment is the right fit again for him, or if, that Gareth Bale is just gone and now he's just a golfer.
Yeah, no, I think, either way you spin it, I think Gareth Bale is going to be quite important for Spurs' prospects for the season. I don't have Spurs in my top 10 or even near my top 10 at the moment because, Gareth Bale's not come back in, and I thought they were a pretty stale club last season, and I haven't seen anything significant. If we ignore the 6-1 win at Old Trafford the weekend just gone, I haven't seen anything too significant over the long term to suggest that club's really made a big step up. But, as we've been saying, if you throw a Gareth Bale in there that's scoring world-class goals, scoring 20 goals, setting up teammates every week, that's the kind of injection that a team like that needs. So, if Bale does turn out to be a success when he comes back to Tottenham, I won't laugh at you putting them in the top 10 in weeks down the line.
Yeah. I mean, only time will tell. They've got a London derby against West Ham this upcoming weekend, but until then, they don't really play anybody until November 21st. They are going to play Manchester City. So I think, at least for a little bit, we're not going to get to see a real test as far as what this team really is. But like I said, time will tell. All right. So moving on to another club that I think we have a bit of disagreement on is Barcelona. I've got them in, where did I have them? What, fourth, fifth? I've got them in fifth. But
I think
you're not.
You got them in
you're
fifth.
not as high on Ronald Koeman's Barcelona as I am.
I think the main thing for me is, kind of the legacy of the 8-2 defeat. I can't quite let go of that just yet. And the fact that, I mean, yeah, sorry, before I move on, I mean, that 8-2 defeat is such a huge statement in the grand scheme of European football, where Barcelona have been giants for so many years, and they get decimated at the hands of Bayern Munich. It was kind of, it was like seeing a puppy get beaten, like killed with a machete or something like that.
That's
And
awful.
there's no this. Yeah, I know. That's how I felt when I was watching it. Anyway, so since then they've gone through a big rebuild in the summer. Koeman's come in and shaken things up. Messi was on the verge of leaving. Suarez has gone. So their golden tiki-taka generation is out the window, and they're in the process of a big rebuild. And ultimately, we don't know where they stand at this moment. I'm a big Barca fan. I don't support Barca, but I would say they're my European team. If I was to support someone elsewhere in Europe, and I'm rooting for them. And it's an exciting period to be in this period of transition. But ultimately, I just think we don't know truly where they stand at the moment.
Yeah, and I think a big problem before I defend myself on having them in my top five. Um, a big problem is obviously the way the club is run at the moment. I mean, you look at how much money came in for Neymar, and the way that they spent that money was horrible. It's almost, as we were talking about Tottenham before, you can kind of compare it to the way that Tottenham spent the Gareth Bale money. They spent it on about 8 players, and 7 of them aren't at the club anymore. Um, so obviously they have some boardroom level issues. But when you look at the talent that is still there, if you look at Ansu Fati, who's now coming in and scoring a ton of goals, and seems like he's up to it. He's up for filling the shoes of Neymar or Luis Suarez. Obviously not in a legacy kind of way, but he can step in and he can score goals. Obviously, you have Leo Messi still on the field. And there's so much talent there. And the issue is no one's really figured out how to put this talent together, with Coutinho obviously going to Bayern Munich on loan. So far, he's been a real bright spot. For me, he's been the best player on the field other than Ansu Fati every game for Barcelona. You've got
Is
Antoine
this
Griezmann.
is this Coutinho? I'm sorry.
Yeah, Coutinho. I think he's been the
Yeah,
best player, really best player on the pitch every game they've played in for both sides. Um, and then, Antoine Griezmann is still there, but like, like Messi, he's kind of a 9.5, and they kind of play in the same area. They're kind of dropping into the same zones around each other, and it's a complete mess. And I never really understood the Griezmann signing in the first place, but the talent is there, and it's about Ronald Koeman finding that setup to make that talent work. Um, if you look at who they were going to buy in the summer, there's still so many question marks over how this club is being run. They wanted Memphis Depay, but to me, Memphis Depay is just another kind of 9.5 that's just going to add more mud in that little 9-10 area. That's just, I don't know. It's just a bit of a mess there up front, but even in that mess, there's so much talent. And,
yeah.
like I said, they went to Sociedad on it's, it's almost like we talk about the can you win on a Tuesday night, windy Tuesday night in Stoke. Well, they went to Sociedad in a like monsoon, a place they haven't won in nearly a decade, and they won 3-0. So this
Mm.
team is already breaking the mold of teams that have come before them. So I think, like Tottenham, I have them ranked where they are because I am hopeful, and I think that the talent that they have will continue to carry them through games until Ronald Koeman finds a way to put all this talent together that is a well-oiled system that will get the best out of every player on the pitch.
Yeah. No, I love the fact that Koeman's come in and tried something drastically different. I think it's a very ballsy move for him to essentially put Coutinho in that number 10 spot. And it's almost as if he's building the team around him. If you're number 10, you are the focal point. You are the central figure in that attack, if you like. And looking at their lineup, I'm looking at their starting 11 right now, which they played against Sevilla, and I'm a big fan of their midfield and attack. They've got Frankie de Jong and Busquets in a double pivot playing in centre mid, and then you've got a three in front of them of Antoine Griezmann, Coutinho, and Ansu Fati, and then you've got Messi up top. So I'm not a huge fan of Messi playing as an out and out striker, but like you said, with some of the aimless signings like Antoine Griezmann, it is a bit of a conundrum as to how best to employ that talent. And I'm looking at that formation there. I actually really like it. I'm a big fan of Frankie de Jong. I'm glad to see that Coutinho and Griezmann are getting a game in something that's like their best position. So I'm just happy with the fact that Koeman has come in and tried something new. I'm just not quite ready to commit them into my top 10 at this point.
Yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from. I just think if they continue to play well, and before that Sociedad game, they beat Villarreal 4-0, and Villarreal are considered a possible top four candidate in Spain right now. So they're kind of dismantling teams that should be competing with them for a top four spot. And if they continue to win when there's question marks around the lineup and the formation and all that, then why not have them in the top 10? Because if you can win while there's question marks, when those question marks get answered, then you're just going to shoot to the top for me. So if the question marks get answered, then I think this is a real top team, but it's just kind of going to be on Koeman's shoulders to answer those questions.
Yeah. No, I'm excited to see them. I'm excited to see them this season. It was close. It was close between them and Sevilla for getting into my top 10, but it came down to the fact that the 1-1 draw between Barca and Sevilla was a better result for Sevilla, who obviously came to the new camp and got a point, whereas I think Barcelona would have been a little bit disappointed by dropping 2 points. So that's what it came down to in the end, but I'm very hopeful of exciting, new, fresh ideas to come out of Barcelona this season. I really am looking forward to it, because it's been a long while since any manager there has been as gutsy as Koeman and come in and tried something completely different. So I'm rooting for him.
Absolutely. We'll see what they can get sorted out there in Catalonia. But moving on to our final segment of the day, let's talk about our honorable mentions. Who's a couple or a few or however many clubs you want to give me that you just couldn't fit into your top 10, but we're right there on the verge of breaking in.
Yeah, I'll try and keep this as brief as possible. But we've got Dortmund, who I absolutely love. They're such a good team to watch. And Lucien Favre has just cultivated this really, really exciting team with so much young talent. 2 17-year-olds starting in their starting 11 is just obscene. And Erling Braut Haaland is, I'm going to say it right now, he is my favourite player in the world at the moment. I absolutely love him. And he's just such a joy to watch. He's massive, he's strong, he's rapid, and he's so cool one-on-one. I just think his opportunities are absolutely limitless. So yeah, that's one of my honourable mentions. Have you got anything to add on Dortmund?
Well, I definitely had Dortmund in there, and when I did my first iteration of my rankings, they were in that top 10. But I think the issue is just a bit of inconsistency, and that's a problem we've seen at Dortmund for years and years now. On their day, they're basically unplayable with that attacking talent that they have, but they're very prone, especially at the back. They're prone to a lot of individual errors. A lot of that comes down to the youth. I don't necessarily rate Lucien Favre as a manager. I think he just has an unbelievable amount of talent at his fingertips, and that's going to get them through games. But yeah, I mean, I think Dortmund could very easily break into that top 10 in weeks to come, because if they find that bit of consistency that they're lacking, then they can put together a run 6, 7, 8 wins in a row and very easily break into that top 10. But outside of Dortmund, an honorable mention that I had that I really wanted to fit in was Napoli. And I think if they had been able to play their game against Juventus over the weekend, I think they would have gotten a result out of it and broken into the top 10, but only because they have only played 2 games is why they aren't in there now. I think Victor Osimhen is one of, if not the best signing in Europe this summer. I think he's probably competing with Ashraf Hakimi for the best signing.
He came in for a lot of money though, didn't he? I was shocked at how much he cost.
He came in for around double what he was valued at. But if you go and watch, they've won their first 2 games by an aggregate score of 8-0. If you go and watch those 2 games, he is a complete game changer. In the first game, which they won 2-0, I believe. Yeah, they beat Parma 2-0. It was 0-0 for a while, and then Osimhen came in and completely unlocked everything. And then they just obliterated Genoa 6-0. And he really is the focal point for that attack. And this is an attack that has kind of been missing goal scoring ever since Higuain left. And yes, they spent a ton of money on him, but the guy is an absolute baller, and I think it's one of the best signings of the summer. So I think Napoli are on the up, and in the next couple of weeks could be breaking in to that top 10. And I think they probably would have if they had gotten a result against Juventus this weekend. But obviously that game didn't go through because of the coronavirus. So Napoli is definitely an honorable mention for me.
Yeah, no, I think they're rightfully worth a mention. And just before, I wrap it up on my end, I'm going to give a quick shout out to the iconic Zenit St. Petersburg, who, I'll be honest, I did have them in 10th place in my first version of these rankings. Mostly because, I wanted to throw someone rogue in there, someone that Adam definitely wouldn't have thought of, and just talk about them. Because, outside of Europe's top 5 leagues, you got Porto, you got Benfica, you got Olympiacos. And I think Zenit are the standout team of that group at this moment. I'll just run you through that. It's not a very well publicized league, but they've got the likes of Malcolm, formerly of Barcelona, and I think Bordeaux before that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he was, fairly well regarded all around Europe. You got Artem Dzyuba up front, who scored a hat-trick against FC Ufa a couple of weeks ago. A very, very impressive hat-trick. He can run at about 2 miles an hour, but let me tell you, when he swings his right foot, it normally ends in the top corner. Who else have they got? Azmoun up front, the Iranian striker, is very well regarded. He's got 6 goals for the season alongside Dzyuba, who's also got 6 goals for the season. And I think they were unlucky last season to be knocked out of their Champions League group. They had a very tough group, and they could have given a better account of themselves in Europe. In the Russian leagues, they absolutely stormed it last season, and they're first again this season. But their last 5 game form has been slightly patchy. Draw, win, draw, win, draw. So I couldn't quite put them in there with a clear conscience, but I think they're one to look out for in the coming weeks.
Well, I have to admit, I don't watch a ton of Zenit. But when you had sent me some rankings 3 or 4 days ago and Zenit was in there, I was definitely very excited to hear why you had them in there. But I'm going to watch Zenit now going forward whenever I can. But, I'm looking at their Champions League group for this upcoming season. They've got Lazio, Bruges, and Dortmund. And Lazio are off to a bit of a shaky start this season. So I think Zenit may just sneak in at second place. I think Dortmund are probably easily going to win that group. But Zenit may just sneak into that second place and get a backdoor into the knockout round. But I'll definitely be watching some Zenit going forward. And like you said, there are some names in that starting 11.
Yeah, some highly regarded names. And I think if you've not watched much Zenit, and anyone watching this video or listening to the podcast, if you've not watched much Zenit, I would urge you to watch the highlights of their 6-0 victory over FC Ufa. Obviously, the standard of opposition is fairly low, but if you actually watch the standard of goals, they're very, very good. And Asmoon and Zuba, particularly up front, they look a cut above the rest. Granted, the rest aren't that much to be writing home about, but they're very good goals. Okay, go and watch it.
All right, so that's just going to wrap up our honorable mentions for the day, and that's going to wrap up this debut episode of the Rank and Report football show. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and I'd urge you all to, if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button down below and hit the notification bell so you get notified whenever we release a new video. If you're listening to the audio version, give us a follow on Spotify and drop a subscription and a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts. And if you know anybody that would enjoy the show, then send this their way and get their thoughts on our rankings and give us yours. You can follow us on Twitter at rank_report and let us know your rankings and let us know your thoughts on our rankings. So, Charlie, any last words for the people?
I think we've smashed it. I think we've smashed our debut episode, and there's plenty more to come, plenty more teams to talk about in a couple of weeks' time. We'll be doing some research, watching some highlights between now and then. But other than that, I've enjoyed myself, and I'll catch you and everyone watching in a couple of weeks.
All right, see you later.